Community Beacon, Fridays at 6:30 EST, with your hosts Michael Seville and Joel Simmons. A channel whose focus is liberty. A place where the lessons discussed and taught will create openings to a more open and freer mindset. A mindset where you may reach the height of your potential and excel. Here are your hosts, Mike and Joel.
What is going on, brother? What is going on?
We are in the place to be. I'm in the place to be with the great host over there. He's the host with the most, the great Michael Seville, real estate king. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Good God. All right, we go. Yeah, goodness.
All right, let's get to it, man. I apologize. I always say when we have technical difficulties, the show ends up being very, very interesting. It always becomes one of those rewatchables. And so the brother introduced me. Of course, I have to introduce the brother on the other side of the screen. I really need to get familiar with this tech because it used to have our names on the bottom of our thing, and I don't necessarily see it. So I don't know how to put it up there. But for those of you who don't know, this brother and I have been doing this show, and I actually went back on videos for the last couple of years. And in my Instagram, I scrolled almost all the way down to my Instagram for the last 2 to 3 years, and we had a lot of advertisements in regards to this show. So it's going on 3 years close to of us doing this show. So if you don't know him, I'll introduce you to him. He's my brother from another mother, the one, the only, the incomparable Mr. Joel with the Tenacity Foundation, Mr. Joel Simmons. And I always enjoy having him around. I can't say that for other people. Other people talk about him, but whatever they say about him is not true. It's not true. He's not a diva. He's not wearing. He's not wearing.
This guy right here. Y'all need to know.
Let me clear it up.
I was gonna not wear a hat. I said, I need to put a hat on.
Let me clear it up. Let me clear it up. He's not a diva.
Is him.
He's not a diva. He's not wearing sunglasses inside the house. The sunglasses just changed colors because he's coming from outside. We were just discussing that prior to getting back onto the show. So it's not that he's a diva. It's not that he's swagged out. It's not that it's the sauce. It's just the way that the sunglasses are made. And the hat, the hat's a whole different situation. But I'm glad to have the brother.
Shout out to Jill. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I'm done with it. That's my mentor. He's so funny. I need to go and see him. So maybe Sunday I'll go check him out if he's in town. Here we are, guys. It's Community Beacon. Definitely appreciate those of you who check in, those of you who watch and listen and engage and communicate in whatever platform it is that you're coming from. I definitely, and I know the brother also does, appreciate you all. I think honestly we get more out of this thing than most people because we're actually engaged into it. I get a chance to listen to the brother and hear his, and we get to go back and forth with our thoughts. And so the brother's been on a roll. I think he said he just did 2 other episodes of It Starts With Me, which is a show that you can catch with him on Wednesday. He's really been turning it up. I got a chance to listen to Parenthood that was dropped. I think that was the most recently dropped episode. That was Wednesday. And so I love to see the brother get into it, get into his gifts and share his gifts and his thought process. This is not just, and I want to be clear. It's not just us getting up here and talking from, and pontificating on thoughts. This is like we talk about it, we go experience it, we gain the wisdom from it, whether it ends up, falling on our face flat or it ends up excelling and pushing us in a different direction. These are like life lessons. There's a time to talk, probably 20% of the time. If we're going to use the Pareto principle, I'm a little bit more stringent. I use the Mike Seville principle, which is 95-5. That's what I work on. But talk 20% of the time, 80% of the time, go out there and experience what is going on with life. So I hope you all are doing that, and we definitely appreciate it. Joel Simmons, guys, what's up? What's going on, brother?
Hey man, all is well, man. Glad to be here with you. Ready to go for another episode. It's been a beautiful, beautiful morning so far. And I know you all are going to catch this at night, but you can see the light inside the rooms. So, but it's all good. We just hope that y'all are enjoying these things. Let's get into it, man. What's the conversation today? We didn't come in here with a conversation on hand. You know, what's the conversation piece today?
You know, it just came to mind. I think I almost was thinking about changing the name of the show and call it Communication Beacon, because I think we spend a lot of time talking and having conversations and in regards to how do we get through to people, whether it's our children, whether it's our spouses, our significant others, whether it's our parents, whether it's people in the community, etc. We spend a lot of time on that. And I would venture to say is that communication, the skill of communication is something that we should all have on the forefront. We should all get better. We shouldn't just stay being lazy communicators. Having said that,
good God Almighty, man, you must have been inside of my episodes from earlier today.
Was I?
You must have been. Oh man,
it almost always, we almost always go down these different paths. And so expound on it, brother. What were you talking about in an episode? And we can get into it because it's definitely something that's been on my mind.
Well, first off, I have to tell y'all, you need to, when the episode comes out, check it out, because I'm not going to go deep into it because I want you to watch the episode. So I'll let y'all know that. I'm not going to hide that. It's going to be called Opportunity is Plenteous. That's the first episode, and then there's the second one, but you're going to hear about it. But part of what I talked about was about the labor of love, you know, and I guess I'll change the message slightly here. But like that labor of love, you're talking about, the labor, the relationship between you and your child, you know, a father and his children, you know, a husband and his wife. And then you can expand on that, and you can also start talking about, you know, an employee and his employer, you know, or you can start talking about an entrepreneur and his business. You know, I mean, there's so many different ways you can expound on it. But the bottom line is that if we're not putting in any labor, we're not going to get what we truly want out of what it is that we're doing. And so that's where I was with that. And I just felt like, man, you're tapping on that door right now.
Let's define labor. I'm curious.
That's good. So you pulling up a definition of labor?
No, I'm listening to you. I'm listening to you explain when you got into labor and the context in which you're using it, so that we, you know how we do it.
Okay, got you. So labor is, so it's work, right? It's work. You know, it can be considered hard work, physical work, whatever. But labor is work, right? If you look in that book of St. Matthew, the 20th chapter, it talks about how the laborers were found by the householder, and the householder went out and found the laborers. And when he went out and found the laborers, he hired them, right? So this is what's happening in all of our lives at some degree, you know. What I mean by that, how can a laborer come out and hire a husband and a wife, right? Well, if you look at the householder being a opportunity, then all of a sudden you see how a householder can come out and hire a husband and wife. It's an opportunity. So an opportunity presented a man to meet a woman, and they got married. Labor of love, right? So you say, well, how can the householder go out and hire a father and a child? Well, if you look at the labor of love between a man and a woman, opportunity arises and they produce a child. Labor of love. So now when we think when you go back and read the scripture, you're never going to see it the same way again. You can't, because you begin to understand it's opportunity. One of the scriptures that I always fall back on, Mike, is Ecclesiastes, the 9th chapter, 11th verse. It's prolific. It means so much. It's all encompassing, right? And at the end of that, it says, time and chance happen to all men. What is time and chance? Time and chance is opportunity. Within time, you'll be granted chances, chance after chance after chance. And the only way you can get, the only way you ever will see chance is in time. Oh, but when am I going to get my chance? When am I going to get my opportunity? Give it time. It's coming. Here's the thing. Are you ready for the opportunities when they come before you? And that right there, maybe that's where we need to strike up the conversation, because labor is to prepare us for opportunities. It's an opportunity to labor, and labor is preparation for new opportunities.
And the title of your episode was the opportunities are plenty. Did you say plenteous? Is that what you said?
Opportunities are plenteous.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, because I hear it, and then even when we get into time, if we listen to time, I'll always say that time is not a real construct. It's something that we all use in order to serve as a standard, a metric that we all can be aligned with. So if I'm telling you I'm going to be somewhere at 2:00, you and I both know, okay, 2:00 Eastern time, this is the time that we need to be here. But how I define time is like now. So the opportunity being plenteous means that the opportunities are already all, for me, when I hear it, is already they're there. And so then you speak about the preparation. Well, when are you preparing? Well, you're always preparing. You're always you're always preparing to get.
Mike, if I could just say this for one moment, I almost named the episode "Start Now."
There's not a better time. There'll never be a better time. The opportunities are abundant. You just, and that's why you can never look at and never compare to what other people are going through or what is happening, because this person who you think is down and out, all it takes is for him to notice something, and everything changes.
Tyler Perry.
Tyler Perry is one, definitely is one of them. It's almost everybody you name. That's why it's interesting when I go back and actually watch it or read or do some research on the person in regards to their history. It's always there's a moment when they just recognize something, but up until that point, they had been preparing for these things. That's why nothing that you go through is for naught. Chris and I were talking about that last night. Everything that you go through can be used as a lesson if you just remove the block of how you look at it. Because sometimes we interpret things as being bad. Oh, this is a bad thing that happened to us, when we know all things work together for the good. So if all things work together for the good, that those are called, if you can just look at everything that happened to you as a learning lesson. Like, well, now why are you going through it? For most of us, because it's two games we playing. I didn't even say game. There's a game that we're playing, and y'all forgive me because I've been listening to Richard Dick Gregory Pauls for the last almost week. So he always talks about it being a game, but it is. So there's this game of life, human experiences, and then there's like salvation, which I just think you just don't play with. So it's always about, so it always comes to this. We should always be thinking about the salvation, but then we're on this human level where we're thinking about these games, the game of life, the game of business, the game of, the court system, the game of IRS, like America. The game is just a game, but then the salvation is here. So if you turn and you look at the salvation, you understand, like, because you shouldn't treat salvation, your freedom, this thing, as a game, because it's a serious thing. However, when you look back on the other side, and this is why you got a Lil Duval, the comedian, says, if you're not laughing at life, you're doing it wrong. Because when you look at the game that's being played, it's almost hypocritical in the way that it is. Here it is, us attempting to control. That's our makeup, control things. That's why we do a lot of these different things that we do. That's why we have these disciplines and these regimented plans, because we tend to look at what's probable versus what's
possible.
Possible, right? We tend to look at what's probable, and that's not. This is the game that we're playing. But we understand that life is uncertain. Life has understanding that we will probably, most of us will never scratch the surface of it. So you got the salvation, you got this game that's being played. So it's like, okay, so how do we play this game and at the same time keep our eye on the salvation? Because whether you choose, well, you could opt out. You definitely could opt out. And that just means just being detached from all of these different things. It's a tough thing. Because as we grow older, and this is us being adults, as we grow older, we tend to become more rigid about these things. We tend to have more attachment to these things. We tend to say, well, this is our child, or this is my child. This is my community. This is my house. This is my we grab all this attachment to these things. And here's a quick story. And what's funny about this game that's being played is when we hear the story about the Indians who sold the Manhattan Island. I think they said it was for like $12 or something. They bought it from the Pilgrims came over, whoever bought it from the Indians for $12. The Indians thought it was funny because they said, who can own these things? Like, how can you own this? It doesn't, the earth belongs to this. So when we look at it from a Western culture mindset, we're like, oh my God, $12. I can't believe they gave it away. But in their mind, they can't even comprehend a person owning something, land, because the land in their culture doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to, whatever spirit it is that they serve, without getting too deep into it. We started doing this same thing. If we just sat here and we got closer to this salvation portion of it, if we got deeply entrenched into it, and some of us feel as if we are, I would say that people can feel it. We can understand it, because if we really believe certain things, then we wouldn't do certain things. We wouldn't act a certain kind of way, because if we're being in it, then we wouldn't act in it. Because because a lot of this side, the game, a lot of the game is pointed in fear. There's a lot of fear in this game. There's a fear of loss. There's a fear of abandonment. There's a fear of punishment. There's a fear of, it's a lot of fear in this game. That's how the game moves. But if we stay in salvation and we be still and we sit in this thing, as we have these human feelings, these human emotions, we go through these human experiences, we'll realize that it's all going to be the way that it's supposed to be. Otherwise, it would be a different way. So if we understood that part, that fear kind of subsides. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I'm just walking around not fearful of things, but we notice it because it should be validated. I'm validating that a part of me feels this fear. So what is that about? And then we go back and we sit in it. And I guarantee you, and if some of you do this exercise, I did this exercise with someone a couple of days ago. If we sat and we in this feeling of fear, abandonment, anxiety, regret, whatever all these negative things that are played on this side, and you see I'm pointing to this side. So this is the fear side. If we sit in these things, we'll realize, oh, okay, that is a thing. I'm allowed to feel this way. And then you go back to salvation. What is my way of being about this thing? So if I'm in a being and a feeling of peace, love, joy, empathy, whatever it is, then that's how I'm going to handle this thing. But if we just look at this thing as whatever it is, how huge it is, oh my God, I can't believe this is mountain here. How am I going to get over it? Am I going to make it? I don't know. If we sit down and I'm so attached to it, if I let it go, is it going to still be, is this thing going to be here? How am I going to be punished for it? When we're in that, we tend to be in a place of overwhelm. We tend to be in a place of confusion. And I pray for peace for people, because that confusion and that overwhelm is tends to guide us. Anytime we lose sight of what the real thing is. All right, brother. I just spewed some stuff.
Yes, sir. I got you. I got you. I got you. There was one word that you had mentioned, and that was like let, and I thought, man, uh, that was a pretty powerful word right there. Let, when it comes down to, what we let happen inside of our life, um, and you know, like when you let fear abide, like if you let it abide, that means that you allowed for it to stay, or you know, I was like, man, that is something. That's something else, and getting back to like the whole point of work, and the labor, you know, like you work hard, you know, you put in your time, and whether you have to work as much of the time that you're allotted in life now in comparison to years ago, it's all based off of, what your rewards are. All of us we all operate underneath the same system, you know, and time is a thing that is measurable for the sake of humankind. That's necessary for us. You know, God is omnipresent, so time doesn't affect him. He doesn't weather in time. We weather in time. And that's one of the ways that we can understand it, because how long has gravity affected our bodies? You know, how much more knowledge have we attained over the course of time? What do we understand today versus yesterday? All of those we contribute to, you know, places that we have been in time. And this labor that we're going through, and these feelings and these emotions that we're going through, you know, um, as you're stating, one man calls it a game, and there's a difference between the life versus the salvation. And it's like, well, what is salvation, right? What is salvation? And for me, salvation is everything. Well, what does that mean to me when I say salvation is everything? Salvation being everything means salvation, you know, and you use the word freedom, liberty. And I thought that that was perfect, because like salvation is me being liberated from all things that constrain me, right? And so what constrains me? The things that constrain me are my own faculties, my mind, right? I think it was in the book of James, where it said that we war, from whence cometh wars, come they not from hence, even thy members. And so it's like my war comes from inside. And Paul said, I have learned that wherever I am, evil is present also. And then he says, who shall save me from this body of sin? I thank God, and then he says, through Jesus Christ. So salvation comes through Jesus Christ. From what? From this body of sin that does what? It does what I would not. My body requests to do what I would not do. And I'm fighting to do what I would do. And what would I do? Well, if I'm in alignment with my God, then I would delight myself in the Lord. Because when I delight myself in the Lord, he will give me the desires of my heart. And what are the desires of my heart? Well, the desires of my heart is that thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. Well, then what is the kingdom? The kingdom of heaven is not in meat or in drink, but it is in joy in the Holy Ghost. So then what do? Well, I find my purpose in the joy in the Holy Ghost, and I live to the best possible that I can. And in that, time has no existence, because in everything that I do, I find joy, because I'm living according to my purpose in life, which is to delight myself in the Lord. And in everything that I delight myself in, no matter where I am, why I am, how I am, all these things give God glory. Because everything is my God, is my salvation at all times.
So how can that be work? You see what you see what I'm saying? Like you just deconstructed time, right? Because you just deconstructed in your in what you just mentioned, and then if you're delighting in it, because you mentioned earlier, you said, well, you work hard, and I say, and I would say, according to whom? I'm only
I'll say,
I'm
uh,
on I'm not, to me, I'm not working hard.
that's perfect.
Yeah.
And right, because these are concepts,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
Let me
Jesus said, I
let me
must
finish.
work the work while it is day.
Yeah, let me finish. So to me, I'm not working hard. To me, I'm just in a place of being. And when I am working hard, it's when I'm resisting something. So if I'm resisting something, then I'm going to work harder. Well, I need to personally find out when I get to that point, like, what am I resisting? What part of me? And resistance is simply my body. Now that I've broken it down, is like, what am I telling? There's a part of me that's telling me something that I'm overlooking. So the moment I get into a place of where I am working hard, I have to dissect I have to be still. So in my stillness, I find peace. But if I'm not finding peace, then that means that I'm not being still. I'm attempting to overcome something, when that's not my way of being anymore. It's to find something to overcome. I'm not looking for something to overcome. I'm looking to align wholly with who I am, or my way of being. So a person may look from the outside in and say, "Oh man, Mike is working hard." No, this is just the way Mike is doing it. I used to take it as, "Oh yeah, I am working hard. I am doing it. I am doing that," only when I was resisting. Yeah. You were saying, brother?
Love it. So work is something that is designed for us, because we're created in the image of God, right? And God put in work. He labored for 6 days, and on the seventh day rested. And then he created us in his image. So, in that word "let," I think that's powerful, because you just mentioned something right then. 26 verse of Genesis chapter 1, it said, and God said, let us make man in our image and after our likeness, and let them have dominion. I don't want to go into the them because that's a whole nother episode. But let, that word by definition is to allow. When God made man in his image, man was made to be, I love the word you use, be. He was made to be a creator because God is a creator, right? God created the heavens and the earth. He was made to be a doer because God worked. He did something. Every day he went out, and some days, I think it was the third day, he did two things. And he worked, and there was a way that he did those things. God would make something, he'll create something, and then after he created something, he will work in whatever that thing was. And then after he worked in whatever that thing was, he evaluated his work. That's the reason why it says, and God looked at it and saw it was good. And then after that, he would choose whether or not he would name it. Those four things that God did every single day for 6 days. And then after that, on the sixth day, he made, fishes and all that type of stuff. And he also made man. And the first thing that he did with man was not to command him to work. The first thing he did was give him an inheritance. And I thought that was powerful because it kind of hit me in a way. It's like, man, the first thing I should be doing for my son, for my kids, is give them an inheritance. And I thought about that, but that's another episode. So an inheritance, because the first thing he said was, let us make man in our own image after our likeness, and then let them have dominion over the fish. So he allowed them to have dominion, which is rule. He let them have the power that he held to himself. But then after he created them, he gave them a job. In the 28th verse, he said, and God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the, and all those things. And so I don't know, brother, I don't know that work is necessarily something that is arduous. I don't think it needs to be arduous. I think that it should be joyful. I think we should enjoy the labor. And that's why I use that term, because I felt like you had said it earlier, and I felt like I agree with it, the labor of love. I think that we put constructs around the word work, and when people rise up in the morning because they're not laboring in love, they're not laboring in joy, they're not laboring in the Father, they hate their labor.
Absolutely.
And so work becomes arduous. I want to work every day. I want to be like my creator. I want to go and create something. I want to work in it until I perfect it. And I want to look at it and I want to say, man, I did a good job with it. You know what? That's what that's called. Name it. And then I want to move on to something else. No. And then maybe I want to, like with my son, I'm working on my son, and then I name him. That son is named Jonah. That's my work. I put labor into that, and then he goes off and he builds something, and I get to watch because I give him an inheritance, and then I give him his command when he leaves out of my house. And I want that for all my children, but I didn't understand that always. Something I had to learn.
Interesting. What did you understand prior to that?
This is something that this part of this took me time to get here. Now, many of these things I was doing, I've got books upstairs that I have written to my daughters, and even one that I've started for my son, because I wanted to put in them certain things. And that was me working inside of them. They don't even know it. My wife doesn't even understand it. But I was putting certain things, recipe. I was writing the recipe of my children. And I wrote that recipe inside of them. And so I didn't even understand the fullness of this that God did. I just broke this formula down while researching for something else. And that's when I went through that first chapter of Genesis and realized God is probably the greatest entrepreneur, not probably, God is the greatest entrepreneur ever set foot.
Right,
He
right.
is, you know, he is the creator of all entrepreneurs, and that's the recipe on how to be a successful entrepreneur. But that's another episode. So, to answer your question, the formula that I just gave is something that I just recently learned. Parts of it is something that I had been doing, and it's basically because I had been studying and I just picked up little things here and
Yeah.
there, but I didn't know how to put them all together. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that I was doing. So that's the difference between an inheritance and a labor right there. God allows you to have something and you have no clue what you have. Just like he allowed them to have dominion. But then in that 28th verse, he commanded them. He said, be fruitful. He gave them a labor. Be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth, and subdue it and have dominion. So now the inheritance became their labor. It changed.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Mm, great day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the labor of love. The labor of love, the labor of peace, the labor of understanding, the labor of so kind of looking at the word labor and looking at the word work with a different connotation. Yeah, I'm in total alignment with that. I definitely would for most people once things get hard for them to sit still and figure out what's making it hard. What
Mhm.
what 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 well, how am I going about this in order to make it hard? Am I supposed to be doing this? Um
Yes.
Someone mentioned to me recently, I think the brother's a brilliant guy. Um and they were talking about as a demographic. I heard him speak saying that black people should sit this one out. Now a lot of people have been saying and when I'm saying sit this one out, the election.
Mm.
um and this is not a new idea. It's always been for a while for the black man in America to, or the black person in America to kind of sit it out. And it always leads up to, you know, maybe 3 to 4 months prior to the election. There tends to be a fear campaign that comes out.
Mm.
There's a lot of fear that comes out, and people are saying that's when we get into the conversation of the lesser evils. So I was having a conversation with someone sent me something, and I agree. I think I think black people should sit this one out. Um, I think they should have sat the last one out, and I think they should have sat the one before that out, and the one before that. They probably should have been sitting out a lot of elections since the '70s, but here we are, and this is where we at, and I can almost guarantee you that there's going to be another fear campaign. And I'm saying black people, but really it's poverty. People that are in poverty need to sit a lot of these things out because they're not necessarily benefiting from this thing. You're not going to benefit if you don't get the information or the proper information or the knowledge. And even if you do get the proper information and the knowledge, fear and culture tends to supersede all of that. Um, so my response was, and this goes back to what we were talking about, is about being still. I said, well,
Mm,
I think you got to be still and figure out where exactly you're at, because fear is going to allow you to be in a different place. So where exactly are you? And this goes into talking about your identity. And we spoke about identity. We've been talking about identity for the past couple of weeks. So about sitting it out, being still, figuring out where you're at, and that way then you can move with wisdom and
mm.
understanding. Um the person said, well, nah, we need to at least just make a decision and do something, or they should make a decision and just to do something and hold it. And I'm like, well, even with that, even if you sat down and you made a decision, chances are you're not going to make the correct decision, because it's not being done from a place of understanding of who you are. You got to know where you're at in order to know where you're going. If you're just saying, well, I'm just going to go, and you in
Mm.
my and you in Miami and you head south talking about you're going to New York because you don't know where you're at. Because you're not in Canada going to New York, you're in Miami going to New York, and you just start moving south. So you got to figure out where you're at. Then all of a sudden you end up you can end up digging yourself into a hole. There's another saying that I love is when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. That speaks to the stillness of it as
I
well.
love that.
Um, so it goes back to this, when this work, as you so eloquently defined, when it comes to this work and you're not joyful in it and you're not delighting in it, it becomes quote unquote hard, whatever that hardness is. It possibly means that you're headed in a different direction, and it would make sense for you to assess. Oh, brother, here's a quote that you said, brother. You said, wherever I find myself, I check myself. And these are things, and I see you do it. You do it all the time. You just mentioned that you had a work you had information that you were writing in regards to your kids, etc. And you had been doing it already. But then you're still seeking this information. I got seek and find joy. You were still seeking this information because you're still checking yourself against it. I'm checking myself. Okay, I'm headed in this direction. Something's off. This is what I call resistance. Something's off. This thing is becoming hard. This work that we inherited. You said we inherited, and then we were commanded, because we didn't recognize the inheritance, and so it was commanded. So this work, we inherited this thing, which means that we have it already, and then we're commanded to it. I think if we can if we can take time to grasp and integrate that, you had it. Will be, things will seem a lot differently. It comes from a different place. Go ahead, brother.
Man, I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. I think that that was well stated, you know, and just that whole clarity about the hardness of whatever it is. Um, and I would have to venture to say that it's not to say that if it becomes tedious, uh, hard, arduous, that it always means that you shouldn't. But I think I agree with you that you should check yourself. I agree with that. You know, because I think about like the woman with the issue of blood, and they talk about how she pressed her way through a crowd. And the word press is to go up against something stronger than yourself. But by pressing through it, she was able to achieve her needed result, which was to fix the issue that she had inside of herself. You know, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, he prayed in such a way that the appearance of blood began to come out of his come out of his body, um, because he had to choose over something that he did not want to do. He didn't want some part of that sacrifice, because he said, Father, you know, he asked the Father to remove that bitter cup. And, so because it was bitter, it wasn't sweet, it wasn't something he wanted to drink. And so he had to press his way through that prayer and to really focus and to really get at one, to really center himself, to really be sure he was aligned, to really, you know, because a part of him, it must have become difficult. And so I think that is so important, because if the job, and if the job can become difficult, but it doesn't always mean that we should not do the job. You know, it can become difficult. When I married my wife, it was easy because love was evident. Many times when I chose to stay with her, it was hard because I was upset, because I was at war. I was at war inside of myself with how I'm going to deal with this. What on earth is that lady? You got to. I And that's like, that was my mind, just like that. I recall even having those type of instances all by myself while I'm deducing whether or not inside the noggin, like, and there's probably people out there that have done that before. Look like you're talking to yourself in the middle of the night, like, this person is out of their mind. But I had to go through all that to get to the end results. You got to go through it to get to it. The children of Israel, they so happy. Oh, we're free from Pharaoh's rule. Then they came to the Red Sea and they heard the footsteps of Pharaoh. And they looked to their left. Hold it, there's a mountain over there. There's a mountain over there. Pharaoh behind us. Red Sea here. We gonna die, y'all. We gonna die. We gonna die. We gonna die. Oh, we gonna die. We gonna die. What did he say to Moses? Did you bring us out here just to die? We was better off where we were at. And then Moses, he had to do what you said, Mike. I don't even know what to do right now. Let me just talk to God, because this is now difficult. As soon as he talked to God, God's like, man, hold that rod up. I gave you everything you need. You just don't know you got it yet. Just let go. Let me do my work. Move out the way. And he opens up the Red Sea. So that is one of the best advice that can be given to every person that's watching this show, is when you get to the point of opposition and things become difficult, they become hard. Check yourself. See if you're doing the right thing, number one. And if you're doing the right thing, then do it with joy, because there's no need for it to be arduous, hard, or uncomfortable if it is what you are supposed to do.
Amen. Yeah, I think that's good. I think we ended on that. it's, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in, brother. And I definitely appreciate the clarity and the yeah, the clarity. it's evident. So I appreciate you, brother, as always.
Likewise, man. I love you,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah, love you too. Love you too. Guys, we appreciate you all too.
I love how you just changed that wavelength right there. Guys!
Yeah, we forgot you were there.
I felt that. I felt it.
Forgot you were there, guys. We appreciate you. But this is definitely one of those, you get a chance to get in on some of these conversations and hopefully gain some type of some clarity, some type of understanding of what it's like just to have some of these high level conversations. A lot of us aren't having them, right? A lot of us aren't having these conversations. We tend to go to people when we are in dire straits. And sometimes people are already in their moments of dire straits, but just to be able to sit back, enjoy, have these conversations, go back and forth. The brother puts in his information that he has and wisdom that he's coming from. I get to put in my wisdom and information where I'm coming from.
Thank you.
We take it all in. It's open, and it's like, oh, okay, there's a different point prayer view. And so it's just the seeking of the truth and the seeking of knowledge, man. And the Bible says the truth shall set you free. And we're definitely seekers of that. So, man, definitely appreciate you all. We will, I guess we'll see you next week. God willing.
We'll see you next week, God will.
We'll remember you all a little bit more next week. All right.
Love it.